morning sun shines on the gleaming hide of a muscular ranch horse. The aroma of bacon and coffee drifts from the wood cook stove at a cow camp. Silver spurs jingle as the men and women of the West get set for another day in the saddle. From the heart of Canada's finest ranching country, this is the Spirit of the West with rancher and horse trainer Hugh McLennan and his collection of music, poetry, and conversations with the folks who live and work with horses and cattle in the Spirit of the West.
William, sometimes known as Bill Stearns, spent a lifetime on horseback, raised on a ranch in the edge of South Dakota's Black Hills. He and his wife Rhonda day worked for ranches all over Wyoming, and Bill was a bronc riding legend. At the Old Timers National Finals in Amarillo in 1985, he won the saddle bronc average, repeating the feat in 1994. He was the 50-plus NSPRA World Champion bronc rider in 1995 and the Canadian Senior Pro Rodeo Association 50-plus bronc riding champ the same year, and repeated the Canadian title in 1966, as well as being runner-up to the NSPRA World Champion bronc rider that year. Now, last week, Bill's widow Rhonda Sedgewick Stearns was here with some of her amazing life story, and she's back this week with some special memories of her late husband, Bill.
When the hat flew off, I yelled at this kid, and I said, maybe you better go pick him up, pick that horse up, because this had been going on long enough, and Will was, in its upper 60s by that time, and I thought he might be getting a little winded.
And Baxter Black today looks back to his days as a large animal vet, and he remembers one procedure that is not only difficult, but pretty darn dangerous.
It's one giant pain in the patushki. Even if you enjoy getting hurt, it's never easy.
On the Rangeland News, lots of information and more about this roller coaster that the NAFTA negotiations have turned into.
Probably we see more movement on Mexico's side than we do Canada. I believe, frankly, we'll get a better deal from both of them.
And another guy who will grace the stage at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival, B.J. Smith, is in our Cowboy Poetry Spotlight.
Well, that's when that unfamiliar, unexpected female sound caught that colt's attention, and he promptly left the ground.
Yeah, that's all about what happens when you tape your GPS to the saddle horn. And I'll have Rhonda Stearns pick out our Western Classic song for this week, and on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, something that I've found really helps calm down a spooky horse. And I'll visit with Rhonda after the Old West Trio leads us out the gate.
Riding, 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 riding. Well, I'm riding, riding, riding back to yesterday, and I'm straddling my saddle high and wide. I'm trading traffic jams and road rage for dusty trails and prairie sage and those city lights for stars up in the sky. And I'm headed for the hills on the horizon, and I'm shouting out a yippee-o-ki-yay, leaving behind these urban battles for Stetsons, boots, and saddles. I'm riding, riding back to yesterday. Well, every morning I wake up to the alarm clock, talking about the traffic on the interstate. Well, there's fender benders, rubberneckers, roadblocks. It's stop and go and hurry up and wait. Now I've had it with that noisy four-lane highway, and those tailgaters always on my tail. Well, it's stop and go and yield and slow. There's road signs everywhere I go. I'm exiting this metropolis hell. Well, I'm riding, riding, riding back to yesterday, and I'm straddling my saddle high and wide, leaving behind these urban battles for Stetsons, boots, and saddles. I'm riding, riding back to yesterday. Hey! Every morning, and that lonesome coyote howling in the night, and those cattle lowing, breezes blowing, sage and tumbleweed roll, and the red tail circling high up in the sky. I'm riding, riding, riding back to yesterday. I'm straddling my saddle high and wide. I'm trading traffic jams and road rage for dusty trails and prairie sage, and those city lights for stars up in the sky. And I'm headed for the hills on the horizon. I'm shouting out a yippee-o-ki-yay, leaving behind these urban battles for Stetsons, boots, and saddles. I'm riding, riding, riding back. I'm riding, riding, riding back. I'm riding, 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 riding back to yesterday.
Well, Rhonda, it's great to have you back this week. And now, what was it that brought you and Bill together in the first place?
It was horses. Horses brought him, his dad and mother together, and us as well. My dad bought one of the earliest quarter horse stallions that was brought into this part of the country back in the 40s when they first started having a quarter horse association and registered horses and so forth. And the Stearnses had bought a couple of quarter horse mares when the association was first formed, and you began to read in the Western Horseman and different places about quarter horses. All of those good ranchers wanted to get into those. So Mr. Stearns had brought some mares out to the ranch and left them for a while and to be bred. And when he came to pick them up, Will came along. He was 9 and I was 3. And he told me after years, he told someone, I guess, at our wedding, an old lady said, well, just when did you meet Rhonda anyway? And he said, oh, I think it was about 48 or 49, that she was a little old pink-haired thing running around there in the sundress. And I remember, he said, she took me by the hand and looked up at me and said, I think I like you. Well, that moment is just branded in my mind. I've never forgotten those blue eyes that day. And he told a friend of ours before we were married that I had beautiful blonde curls. My mother always took care of my hair, and said that little girl had such beautiful blonde curls. I'd never seen anything like it. And I said to myself, when that little girl grows up, I'm going to marry her. That's how we met, and it was horses that brought us together. We had both rodeoed and both grown up breaking horses and training horses, and I was breaking and training horses from the time I was about 12 until I was 18, and then I joined the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. It was just the RCA at that time, Rodeo Cowboys Association, and started playing the organ for rodeos. And
oh, really?
So for many years, traveled all over the United States, doing that in 13 states from North Carolina to Ellensburg, Washington. But and through those years, we didn't see each other too often. He went into the Sheridan, Wyoming country and worked on ranches and so forth. After a bad drought hit this part of the country, he was ranching with his dad. And they only lived about 30 miles, 35 miles from us on the same creek. Main Beaver Creek ran through a lot of our property, and it ran through theirs as well. And so it was just kind of one of those unusual things that was apparently meant to be.
Well, I'd like to hear more about Bill's amazing bronc riding career, Rhonda, so let's do that next. And I've got a great song from Dan Roberts, When the Spirit of the West, continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. I have Rhonda Sedgewick Stearns back on the line from the ranch in eastern Wyoming, and today we're remembering her late husband, the legend Bill Stearns. And Rhonda, could you go over maybe some of Bill's accomplishments on the senior bronc riding circuit?
He had won the average at the Senior Pro Finals in Amarillo in 85, and then he moved back up here to Wyoming on the ranch with his folks to help them because they were elderly, and he didn't go to hardly any of those rodeos or other rodeos. He probably got on maybe 4 or 5 head of broncs in competition for the next 9 years. And then in 94, we went to a few senior pro rodeos after we were married in in 92, and we were doing ranch day work and everything in 92 and 93 and just didn't go to any, but they called him and said, you know, we need more bronc riders at the national finals, and we want you to come in 94. So we went to Reno, and he won the average, and he had won the average in Amarillo in 85. And I thought that was a tremendous accomplishment for a bronc rider, having hardly ridden a dozen broncs in that intervening 9 years, to win the average at the finals both of those years. You know, the Cowboys always say, if you don't win the world, well, if you win the average, that's the next best thing, because all the wolves are there.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, you're riding several head of horses against the best of the pack.
Yeah.
So that was one of his proudest accomplishments, I think, was that he won the 85 average and then the 94 as well.
Right. He retired, I believe, I read someplace at about the age of 57.
Yes. I think that was the last year that he rode any broncs. He got his wrist broken, got bucked off at Loveland, Colorado. The horse kind of slipped, and then it was unseated and went off and landed on his wrist, and that was the year he was 57. And so he doctored it up, and he still went to the finals that year, but he decided that was going to be the last. He really wanted to ride a bronc on his 70th birthday, and I had to talk like a good fellow to talk him out of it, because I knew he was a little bit out of shape, you know, in practice, but sometimes they do that, and it works out really well, you know.
Right. And now I'd like to hear some more about Bill's bronc rides that took place outside the arena, where maybe it was just the two of you day working on ranches. But first, this song is almost an autobiography with the life story of Dan Roberts, who shoes horses and co-writes songs with Garth Brooks.
Everybody's hocked a saddle. Most hands have sold a favorite pair of spurs. It's part and parcel of a cowboy's life. It's just to test your nerve. You're too broke to pay attention when you're riding through a rough string of luck. But I still love my life. Wouldn't trade it for $1 million. 'Cause I got an old hat that fits me just fine, a pair of chinks that are worn out but custom made. I get to see the horses shed in early spring and go to a jackpot roping if I get paid. I've chased lions up on Big Bug Mountain and shod some horses down on the track. I've smelled hay that'd take your breath away and hitchhiked from here to who knows where and back. Why, I've even entered a couple of indoor rodeos, slept under a teepee made from a wagon fly. Me and an old bronc swam the Willamette River one time, and he was gentle when we come out the other side. I set chokers on a high lead logging crew way up on the Oregon coastal range. I even bought one brand spanking new pickup truck, then had to survive for days on ashtray change. Everybody's hocked a saddle. Most hands have sold a favorite pair of spurs. It's part and parcel of a cowboy's life, just to test your nerve. You're too broke to pay attention when you're riding through a rough string of luck. But I still love my life. Wouldn't trade it for $1 million. But there is one thing that really sticks in my craw. I sold my first and only bronc saddle like a fool. It went from priceless to a couple $100 because I needed to buy me some horseshoeing tools. But you know, I just did what I had to do at the time. I sold something I had to buy something I was needing, and truth is, I was happy to have the money. It's whatever it took to keep my old pocketbook from bleeding. But $200, what was I thinking? That's less the commission. I'm here to tell you, whoever's got that saddle could name their price if that boy of mine could wear just a little basket stamp off that old association. Everybody's hot to saddle. Most hands have sold a favorite pair of spurs. It's part and parcel of a cowboy's life, just to test your nerve. You're too broke to pay attention when you're riding through a rough string of luck. But I still love my life, wouldn't trade it for $1,000,000. Oh, how I love my life, wouldn't trade it for $1,000,000.
Pretty much a true story from Dan Roberts about his life, and I don't know if he ever did get that bronc saddle back or not. I know he still wins an awful lot of celebrity team ropings that he enters. Well, Rhonda, like a lot of working cowboys, some of the greatest bronc rides of all take place a long ways from the arena, where there's no 8-second whistle.
Most of his bronc rides ever in his whole life happened like that, because Stearns is always, as everyone does to begin, I think they were lived a little more on the edge than some people even did, but they would, ride the green horse, have them going in the corral a few times, and then they're out for a 50-mile jaunt that day all over the hills and prairies and creeks and everything else, and that's what makes a horse. And it's also what makes very good cowboys. I had to chuckle at his father asking when he was at the national finals in Reno when Will made the high point ride of the whole rodeo, even amongst the 40 and 50s, the year that he won the world. And his father was there, and he said, I just don't know how fellows learn to ride broncs anymore, because there's not many rank horses out there for them to get on. I said, Father, they go to rodeo schools, But yeah. Yes, we did have our wrecks in the pasture, horseback, with the livestock. And, when you go out, when you're day working and you go out in the morning, and we day worked on some big outfits in the Thunder Basin grasslands where it hasn't been split up with fences. And one summer pasture at the Fiddleback Ranch was 36 sections, and they calved in a pasture that was 20-some sections. And we just had experiences which people in our era probably wouldn't get in my era. Now, Will had already done a lot of day working up in Montana, the Montana-Wyoming borderland countries out of Sheridan and that part of the country, when he was working again in that big government pastured country where they were huge pastures. So he had those experiences before I did, and that came after our marriage, and we worked down there.
Well, I know you've got many more stories, Rhonda, and I'd like to get to a few more just a little bit later. Next, Baxter Black and some memories of his days as a large animal vet, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this.
Howdy, friends. This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan, with a little peek at bull testing. Ladies and gentlemen and followers of cowboy humor, in a moment of weakness, I, Baxter Black, have written another book. I appreciate it. Its title is Scrambled Wisdom. Almost isn't is it? Which almost makes sense. Well, our offer does make sense. Only $19.95 plus shipping. A solid gold guarantee. Call 800-654-2550. Online at BaxterBlack.com. One of the enduring mystical corners of the commercial cow business is that procedure we loosely call semen testing. This is the time of year that many cattlemen do it. It's after the fall works, before calving, and before the spring bull sales. Well, just a word about the procedure from a vet's point of view. It's one giant pain in the patushki. Even if you enjoy getting hurt, it's never easy. Imagine taking a two-blade Sikorsky helicopter into the shop and asking the mechanic to check the propeller bolts. I can set it down, but I won't be able to shut off the engine. If you've ever tried to give a grizzly bear a haircut, you might be able to relate. First off, it's fairly dangerous. Kneeling alongside the squeeze chute with the bottom side panel down, you are a short arm's length from four lightning-quick slashing hooves that can make Mike Tyson's best punch feel like a little kitten's paw. And then the procedure calls for you to palpate the testicles. Remember where they are? Between two of these giant, lightning-quick slashing hooves. It's always struck me as odd that if people can invent window squeegees that can reach the second story, submersible robots that can photograph the Titanic, and machines that can shake the nuts out of a pecan tree, they could dang sure invent a tool that could palpate a bull's pecans. But no, we reach in and grab them. Well, I've mashed my finger, but no broken arms or wrist. I have suffered several scalp lacerations from the sidebars coming loose and banging me on the head. Well, once you have the probe inserted and held by an officially appointed plunger, the delicate dance begins, and I can say that achieving a satisfactory deposit on the microscope slide requires considerable experience. It's more akin to calling coyotes than putting 3/4 in a Dr. Pepper machine. This shadowy ritual continues under a microscope, where the diviner of fertility seeks to find some signs of life in a penny-sized droplet collected at great expense and extreme risk from a bull you bought as cheap as you could. And when you ask the doc if the bull's okay, he'll probably say, "Yep." And you'll say, "Well, how do you know?" "Oh," he'll say with an inscrutable look in his eye, "it's a combination of things." This is Baxter Black on Spirit of the West with Hugh McLennan. Thanks for listening.
How about a weekend pass to the 22nd Annual Kamloops Cowboy Festival, March 15th to 18th, 2018. A terrific list of entertainers, including Gary Prescott.
I once rode with the best of the cowboys back in the days of my youth.
Brian Salmon.
So who would pack the lantern? There are some buckaroos that would pack it tall and proud just like we need to do.
Tom Cole.
Out on the plains, an old cowboy sings a song to his herd.
The BC Cowboy Hall of Fame inductions, dinner shows, evening concerts, a wonderful art and gear show, the Art of the West show and sale, workshops, and everything from guitar picking to saddle making. The best place to get all the details is bcchs.com, and for tickets, call 1-888-763-2221. Another performer you won't want to miss at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival is Ryan Fritz. I sure enjoyed him at the Ivan Danes picnic last August, and Ryan's CD Keeper of the West has won a bunch of awards, and I'm pretty sure he'll be doing this song at the festival. It's so special to a lot of folks in BC. It's called Alkali.
Well, a long time ago, when I left my prairie home, headed for a cowboy job at Alkali. Ah, damn it, how I love the West and love to rope and ride. I was heading for a job in Alkali. My 1972 Chevy truck was through and it died on the side of the road. So with my saddle and my dog, I thumbed down a load of logs. I was back on track again for Alkali. Now the first one I met, I think, was Joe Rosette, at a branding dragging calves to the fire. And I thought, what the heck, these guys who drag them by the neck. But that's how it was done at Alkali. There was that grave of Francesca Ciara. They say that he lays with silver spurs. Each time we rode by, looked each other in the eye and just smiled, riding that Alkali. Bronc one, I hear that he's moved on. The horses I rode there have died, but my young dreams fulfilled, now stored in my mind. I'm riding that Alkali. I still see that grave of Francesca Ciara. They say that he lays with silver spurs. And each time we rode by, looked each other in the eye and stranger smile, riding that alkaline, riding for alkaline. I was riding that alkaline.
The news of the Rangeland, a roundup of news and coming events from around the West.
At the top of page 1, it says, for a while it looked like the North American Free Trade Agreement was about done, but as the process unfolds, that might not be the case. Here's more from Gary Crawford.
NAFTA renegotiations are in an official break for a month or so, but as in all of these kinds of talks, there is work being done behind the scenes. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue was asked his opinion of how things are going with NAFTA.
I'm more hopeful than I have been. I think probably we see more movement on Mexico's side than we do Canada. I believe, frankly, we'll get a better deal from both of them.
And it may not take as long as some people are forecasting.
We've got the Mexican elections coming up. We've got one more round here, which I believe will be, my opinion, will be extended, but I think, again, we get the Mexican politics out of the way. I think we'll have a deal before the end of the year.
A deal Perdue said he hopes will continue to benefit U.S. farmers and agribusiness. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Well, since that report, we've learned that the early March deadline for wrapping up the talks has been extended to at least early April, and participants have said privately that it could take months longer than that. Well, congratulations to Adam Thiessen, the 2018 Trainers Challenge winner at the Saskatoon Horse Expo in Saskatchewan. And there was also a great job done by Alex Alves and Chris Monroe. And Alex will be in the Trainers Challenge at the Red Deer main event, going up against two-time champ Cade Mills, along with Jason Irvin of Southampton, Ontario. And we'll see you there. John Vanderhayden, a well-known figure in southern Alberta's feedlot industry, passed away February the 12th at the age of 85. He was born in the Netherlands and moved to Canada in 1957, settled near Picture Butte. And he and his wife raised 6 children while establishing and operating Vanderhayden Ranches. The initial operation remains in the family, and it's now operated by John Hayden Jr., who expanded the feedlot business to become Grandview Cattle Feeders Limited. And he was a passionate supporter of the beef livestock industry and the delegate to the former Alberta Cattle Commission for more than 10 years. An Angus bull sold at an auction for a record-breaking $800,000 a couple of weeks ago. The bull SAV Elation 7899 represents a lot of hard work and know-how, produced by Schaff Angus Valley, St. Anthony, North Dakota. And he was purchased by the Square B Ranch and Cattle Company of Warsaw, Montana, and the Bogle Ranch of Langley, Oklahoma. Wow, $800,000. I guess you probably wouldn't turn him out to pasture with a bunch of cows. Well, in a field of 10 world's greatest horseman finalists that many rein cow horse industry veterans described as the toughest in recent memory, in Scottsdale, Arizona, professional Kelby Phillips won the coveted title, riding Hickory Holly Time, owned by DT Horses. After 9 days of non-stop reined cow horse action in Fort Worth, Texas, the National Rein Cow Horse Association Celebration of Champions wrapped up on February the 17th with the DT Horses World Greatest Horseman Finals in front of a sellout crowd there in the Will Rogers Memorial Center. Boy, what a great facility that is. I remember sitting there with R.W. Hampton watching the World Paint Championships a few years ago, and Lisa had to tell us to keep our voices down because people were trying to hear the announcer. Well, next week, a regular sale at the BC Livestock Co-op in Williams Lake Yards, March the 15th, and the regular sale in Vanderhoof is March the 16th. The Okanagan Falls regular sale and All Breeds Bull sale is March the 19th. You can get all the details at bclivestock.bc.ca. Meanwhile, over at the Innisfail Auction Market, regular cattle sales every Wednesday, and there are a lot of special bull sales and breeding stock sales coming up as well, and you can see all the information on those at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And to consign your cattle, give them a call toll-free 1-800-710-3166. You can see the list at InnisfailAuctionMarket.com. And that takes us down to the final item. And I found this in an old file the other day, and it's actual announcements taken from church bulletins. For example, one of them says, "This afternoon there will be a meeting in the south and north ends of the church. Children will be baptized at both ends." And I don't think they meant it this way, but it says, "A bean supper will be held Saturday evening in the church basement. Music will follow." And that's the Rangeland News. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, a few things that can really help calm a horse down after something spooks them, and more memories of the late Bill Stearns from Rhonda when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West. Coming up on the Urban Saddles and Western Wear horse training file, I'll give you a suggestion that I've found really helps get a horse calmed down after something spooks him. And now, you've heard me mention at the end of every program, thanks to our great support crew, Mark and Kathy McMillan. Well, as you probably know, they own and operate Meadow Springs Guest Ranch. They are the project managers for the Kamloops Cowboy Festival and so much more. And the wonderful poet, Mag Mawhinney, who will be at the festival this year, kind of wrote their life story. And the great singer Alan Moberg, who will also be at the festival this year, set it to a beautiful melody, and it's called Breakin' Even, Mark and Kathy's story.
They bought a piece of heaven far away from city living, and soon discovered it would take all the strength they could be given. They spent all one summer clearing land, picking rocks. They mended fence and fixed the pump that watered all the stock. For years they stretched $1 and sacrificed their freedom, and all along the way they were only breaking even. They were keepers of the land and a dream that they believed in, and the life they chose to live meant much more than breaking even. The fees they paid the government for dudes to ride the trails, and they emptied out their pocketbooks at all those auction sales. But each day was a promise to face the stormy weather. They always knew they'd make it through if they rode on together. For years they stretched $1 and sacrificed their freedom, and all along the way they were only breaking even. They were keepers of the land and a dream that they believed in, and the life they chose to live meant much more than breaking even. The cost to feed when hay ran short took every cent they had, and she had to take a job in town when things got real bad. The cards were stacked against them, but they knew they'd never fold. The only peace they'd ever known was worth its weight in gold. For years they stretched $1 and sacrificed their freedom, and all along the way they were only breaking even. They were keepers of the land and a dream that they believed in, and the life they chose to live meant much more than breaking even. Yes, the life they chose to live meant much more than breaking even.
Now it's time for the Horse Training File, brought to you by Irvine Tack and Western Wear, Canada's largest Western store.
Urban Tack and Western Wear is Canada's largest Western retailer with over 60,000 square feet of everything Western. This Western wonderland has an endless variety of tack, boots, jeans, and outerwear with new items arriving daily. With over 1,000 saddles to choose from, you're bound to say Urban's is totally a unique place to shop. The kids will love the styles. You love the quality. Urban Tack and Western Wear off exit 305 on Highway 2 by Crossfield, open 7 days a week. Online at urbans.ca. You know, I hear from so many riders who are really intimidated by a horse that goes along okay until something spooks him, and then his attitude changes, his head comes up, his eyes get big, and he stays wired like this for what seems like a long time, and they all want to know how to get him back to a relaxed, willing state of mind. Well, I like what the fine California bridle horseman Bruce Sandefur says. It all comes down to us. If we can get soft enough, fast enough after a spook, the horse will usually let down and come back pretty easily. Now, we're always going to grab him in the first moment, and then we have to get our bodies soft as quick as possible for them. So often the rider will stay rigid until the horse lets down, and sometimes this escalates the severity of the scare. And, a number of years ago now, a horse was brought to our place with this problem, and it was so bad that when something spooked him, it resulted in a flat-out, out-of-control runaway. So what his owners did was lock him into a chute and work him over with flags and plastic bags and ropes and tarps. How did that work? Well, that definitely made him much worse. Now, the thing is, you can flag and tarp a horse to death, but you will never take all the spook out of him. And I think a certain amount of desensitizing is necessary. Like, I sure don't want him to jump sideways every time I start swinging my rope. And with a couple of horses of my own, I want them to be calm and relaxed when I pick up my guitar and start to play while I'm riding. Now, that night might not be for everybody, but it's one of my deals. I'd also like to, if possible, even be able to throw a baby calf over his back and then climb on without him spooking about that. So some desensitization, I think, is important. But the big thing is we have to be confident to build their confidence. So we have confidence in us, so they allow us to be the leader, and that can help them through every scary situation. And for Urban Saddles and Western Wear, that's the Horse Training File. Boy, do our horses ever enjoy that daily feeding of Hoffman's Horse Ration, and you can find out more at hoffmanshorseration.com. Come and see the largest selection of well-broke horses in Western Canada at the 5th Annual Top Gun Horse Sale. April 14th, high noon, at the Kelnash Event Center, Ponoka, Alberta. You can preview the horses Friday, April 13th at 4 p.m., and they start coming through the ring Saturday, April 14th at high noon. Horses for ranch work, team penning, rope and trail riding, barrels, mounted shooting, and kids' horses. Every type of horse you might be looking for, including loads of ranch horses. Every horse will be ridden, driven, or led into the ring. Rain or shine, everything's inside. For information and a look at the horses, see TopGunHorseSales.com or call Jordan Dodds, 403-783-0246. Boy, if you're looking for a well-broke horse, that is the place to go. Well, Rhonda Sedgewick Stearns is still on the line, and Rhonda, I guess we still have time for maybe one more story about Bill.
One day I remember him dodging the cottonwood limbs down on the headwaters of the Cheyenne River on the Fiddleback Ranch. A buckskin horse blew up with him, and he'd been riding him a lot, and I don't know what ticked the horse off. It could have been that he'd heard a snake, even, because there were plenty of them around there. But anyway, he just really blew up, and another fellow and my husband were catching a calf that needed to be doctored. And so they were pursuing this calf around under these low-hanging trees and so forth, trying to get it roped, and then the old horse spooked and blew up. And I was helping the other young man hold the cow and calf close so they didn't run off, and I was quite a ways from him and wasn't concerned at all. And pretty quick, it went on for a couple of minutes, and I saw his hat fly off. Now, when his hat would fly off, normally things were getting pretty rough because he wore a hat really pulled down and stayed on his head.
Well, yeah,
so,
you don't want that to happen.
when the hat flew off, I yelled at this kid, and I said, maybe you better go pick him up, pick that horse up, because this had been going on long enough, and Will was, in its upper 60s by that time, and I thought he might be getting a little winded. So the kid headed over that way, but about that time he finally got the horse pulled up, and it was, but those were things that he had grown up with. His family had always raised a lot of horses and sold horses to the remount, and so from the time he was tiny, we had a snubbing post that came from that ranch, and I sent it back over to the ranch with his cousin just recently. I had asked for it the day I was helping work cows there, and it fell over in the corral, and I looked at it. There were 3 deep grooves around that snubbing post from the ropes that the men had worked the horses with, and over 3 generations. And I looked down at that and just teared up, and I thought, that's my husband's family tree. So I asked his uncle, who lived on that place, if I might have it, and we put it on a base and put it in the living room, and I surprised him with it for a Christmas present and had it all set up and had gathered a lot of pictures of his parents' and uncle's photos they'd taken that had pictures of the corral and the snubbing post in it. Unfortunately, no pictures of the men working horses with it because people just didn't do that back in those days. But they were taking pictures of their colts after they started raising quarter horses and so forth for registration papers and so forth, and so that's how we happen to have some pictures of the snubbing post.
Okay, Rhonda, now, if you can just hang on a few more minutes, I'll have you pick our classic Song of the West for this week. That's coming right up. And then it'll be B.J. Smith with the story of the time he taped his GPS to the saddle horn, when the Spirit of the West continues right after this. Welcome back to the Spirit of the West, and while I have Rhonda Sedgewick Stearns still on the phone from the ranch down there in eastern Wyoming, I just wanted to ask you, Rhonda, what your all-time favorite cowboy song might be.
Oh, my mama used to sing Get Along Little Dogies to me when I was a tiny child, and I guess, that's probably about my favorite of the old cowboy traditional songs, because of having had Mama teach it to me when I was so small. Right. I think that one really resonates with me. Some of the things that have been written in recent years are wonderful, and Night Rider's Lament is my favorite of those. And we had our friends Bill and Jan Wood sang that at our wedding, Will and me. So.
Wow. Yeah, wonderful song. I think Michael Burton wrote that.
I think he did too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I will definitely play Night Rider's Lament in the next little while, but right now, here's Ben Crane and his kind of unique version of Get Along Little Dogies.
As I was walking one morning for pleasure, I spied a young cowpuncher riding alone. His hat was throwed back and his spurs was jingling. As he approached, he was singing this song. Whoop-a-tie-I-O, get along, little dogies, it's your misfortune, none of my own. Whoop-a-tie-I-O, get along, little dogies, you know that Wyoming will be your new home. It's early in the spring when we round up the dogies, mark 'em and we brand 'em and bob off their tails. Round up up the horses, load up the chuck wagon, and then throw the doggies out on the long trail. Whoop-a-tie-I-O, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune, none of my own. Whoop-a-tie-I-O, get along, little doggies, you know that Wyoming will be your new home. Way down in Texas, where the chimson weed and the sandburrs roll. We'll fill you up on prickly pear and show you until you are ready for Idaho. Whoop-a-tie-I-O, get along, little doggies, it's your misfortune, none of my own. Whoop-a-tie-I-O, get along, you little doggies, you know that Wyoming will be your new home. Oh, you know that Wyoming will be your new home.
Did I mention that Ben Crane is also going to be at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival? Well, he sure is. Now, you know, I have packed a portable GPS with me when I've been riding up on the summer range. Did that last fall, and in fact, I clocked Cody, my good mare, walking up the trail at about 6 miles an hour. But I never did tape it to my saddle horn like B.J. Smith did one time.
So I stopped in this little store the other day. They had this rig, and it's got a lady's voice in there telling me where to go and how to get there. And I bought one. I paid good money for it, if you can imagine. Well, years ago, I knew a gal that was pretty handy with a string of pack horses, and she was out of the Rocky Mountain country as well, and Rocky Mountain House, and I thought if this little rig is half as good as she is, why, I'd be in good hands. So I named it after her. See, Nada is my GPS. Rides up on the dash. Guides me down the highway so I won't have a crash. She seems to know what's up ahead before it comes in sight and tells me when it's timely to turn left or turn right. She knows how far I have to go and when I will arrive. Maybe when to merge a bit on highways that I drive, and then she shows me pictures of roads and streets and zones. Her voice is sort of digital. Never changes tones, but I figured she'd be handy with me on the trail, especially at the skinny spots way up there in the shale. She'd keep me on the straight and narrow and never get me lost, and I'd be glad to have her no matter what she cost. So I taped her on my saddle horn. On I turned her switch, because they told me at that gadget store she'd work without a glitch. Well, it could be the colt I rode was maybe green a tad, but I figured that with Nada, why, how could this ride go bad? Well, that's when that unfamiliar, unexpected female sound caught that colt's attention, and he promptly left the ground. Well, along about the 7th or the 8th leap in the air, Nada's voice got muffled by my derriere. Now, straddling a saddle horn is never that much fun. So I scouted out a landing spot for where my ride was done, but that colt went right on bucking with Nada in the dance, instructing him to make a U-turn when he got a chance. And then everything went silent, sort of in a hesitation, so Nada could inform us we were at our destination. Now, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't badmouth Nada just because I'm short a bit of hide and the noise my rib cage does, but I figured she was pouty as my pain began abating when she told me quite sarcastically, she's recalculating. Nada. Thank you.
And the GPS named, of course, in honor of that great lady of the trails, Nada Hallett, I think. Pretty sure that's who Brian BJ had in mind. Well, thank you so much for making the ride today, and I sure hope you can join us right here next week at the same time. And I hope you can come around and have a visit when you're at the Kamloops Cowboy Festival. Oh yeah, our next Spirit of the West cruise to the Maritimes and New England happens in September when all the hardwoods are in beautiful color, and we'll have a terrific cruising cowboy band on board and lots of extras for our group, and there just might be a few spaces left. To find out, you can call the toll-free number 1-800-530-0131. Till next week, I am Hugh McLennan. Hope to see you down the trail somewhere real soon.